In the days when lords held steel and honour like banners aloft, there stood a defence unmatched, chain mail, the very soul of a knight's protection. Forged from countless interlocking rings of iron, this noble mesh once guarded warriors as they rode into glory or death. But as the skies darkened and weapons grew crueler, the shining links that once held death at bay began to falter. Maces crushed through valor, arrows whispered ruin, and thunder roared muskets shattered the past forever. In this tale we ride through the shifting winds of war, where armour was not merely cloth or steel, but the final breath of an age now lost. Join us as we ride into the heart of battle, through blood, fire, and fading honour. This is the story of how the strongest armour of men was undone by time itself. Like, subscribe, and stay for this journey through steel, war, and the fall of chain mail. For many an age, before thunder of firesticks cracked the sky, before cannons roared across valleys and men no longer looked each other in the eyes when killing, there was the knight. Clad in rings of woven steel, he rode with pride, not for coin alone, but for land, for lord, and for the echo of his name in halls yet built. His armour chain mail was more than protection, it was a skin of iron. A second flesh forged with patience and sweat, by hands that knew the weight of duty. These rings, thousands upon thousands, lay one upon the next, forming a mesh so firm and yet so yielding that it moved like fabric and defended like stone. Upon his shoulders, over his chest, down to his thighs and even his mittens, the knight bore mail with honour. It was not light, yet it allowed him movement. It bent when he rode, swayed when he walked, and danced when he fought. It caught the gleam of morning sun, and made a knight look like a walking storm of silver. Chain mail stood as a mark of worth. Not all could wear it, not all deserved to. It cost dearly, in coin and in craft, and to bear it meant you were bound to blood and oath. In the early Middle Age, no greater proof of preparedness for war did a man possess. Swords struck against it and slipped, axes glanced off with curses. Many a brave soul owed his life to those tiny iron circles, stitched so tightly they seemed a wall. But time is crueler than any blade. The edge that mail turned away would, in time, be replaced by weight, by force, by the hammer and the mace. And what mail could not cut, it could not soften either. The knight, struck by heavy blunt weapon, though his rings held firm, felt his bones crack within. A warhammer did not care for links, it sought ribs and skulls beneath, and though the knight stood proud, he bled beneath his armour. Still the knight wore his mail, he had no better shield. For a time he hoped it would endure, but the wind carried change. From distant fields and foreign men came bows long as a man's body, drawn by arms trained from youth. The English longbow, swift, strong, silent, its arrow when loosed did not sing, it whispered death, it flew farther than javelin, truer than thrown axe, and when aimed right, it slipped between rings or burst them apart. Knights once laughed at archers, no longer, they fell before the storm of shafts like wheat under scythe. The neck, the armpit, the groin, no ringed mesh could fully seal those places. The arrows found them over and again. Crossbows soon followed, cruder perhaps but deadly. They needed not years of practice. A peasant could kill a noble from the shadows. With a pull and a bolt, chain mail fell to second place in the mind of war. And yet even still the knight clung to his iron robe. But another form took shape in forge and fire, plate, cold, curved, unforgiving, armour not of rings, but of slabs and shapes of steel, beaten into the very form of man. At first it was only in pieces, a chest-plate here, a shoulder guard there, still worn over mail, still needing mail beneath, but the future was dawning. A new kind of knight stepped forth. One whose armour glinted not with the gentle sway of rings, but with flat shine, like mirrors forged for Mars. He moved not as freely, but he feared less. The hammer bounced, the arrow bent, even the bolt from crossbow struck and sparked, failing to find blood. This was transitional armor, part mail, part plate, still a knight, but one bearing layers as walls. Mail still hung at joints where no plate could twist, the elbows, the knees, the armpits, all draped in old rings. But plate ruled now, and with each new war the mail grew less. Where once it was the first thing forged, it now filled the gaps. Where once it wrapped the whole form, it now lay beneath, unseen, beneath the steel mask, beneath the cuirass, beneath the greaves. Still loyal, still useful, but no longer lord, then came thunder, gunpowder. At first men scoffed, what threat could a fire-stick bring, slow and loud and dirty, but they learned, as all learn in war. They learned when lead balls pierced the best forged breastplates. They learned when helmets rang not with the clang of deflected sword, but cracked open from shot. They learned when armourers made plates twice as thick, tested with bullet, bore-proof marks, and still men died. The mail had already failed against arrow, it stood no chance against fire. The rings, once so strong, tore like parchment when faced with musket shot. Men tried to make armour greater, heavier, thicker. But it bore cost. A man encased in full steel, doubly plated, moved slow. He tired, he stumbled, he was no longer knight, he was coffin. By 1,600 the mail shirt hung not on warrior's back, but in lord's hall. Rusting, remembered, on battlefield men wore cloth and courage, maybe a helmet, maybe a breastplate, but no more full armour, no more links, no more lords in shining iron, and as armour faded, so did knighthood. No longer did lords ride to war with banner and song. Kings raised armies not of nobles, but of paid men, soldiers, musketeers, men who knew gunpowder better than honour. War became a matter of volley and reload, not charge and clash. The knight as he was had no place there. In courts and tourneys he remained, dressed still in steel, but now gilded and carved. Armour with lions and eagles, not made for battle, but for dance and duel. Chain mail, too, was their ornament now, not armour. It shone in parades, hung from paintings, sat on statues, no longer war but memory. The knight had become a symbol, not a soldier, a relic of older time when death came from steel and shield, not fire and smoke. Yet do not think chain mail died forgotten. It served, long and faithful, from the early Middle Age, when swords were king, through the Crusades and the 100 Years' War. Chain mail guarded the hearts of the bravest. It took thousands of blades, thousands of strikes. It was proof of man's will to lave amidst chaos. It did not fail. It was outpaced, a servant to a time when honour rode beside danger, when a knight bore both burden and glory. Its rings held fast as long as they were needed, then bowed with grace to the new order. Some say the sound of maillet's soft rattle, its cold jingle, is still heard in dreams of warriors. Some say the ghost of knights wear it still, riding across mist, covered fields, forgotten by time but never by glory. So remember the chain mail, not as weak, not as outdated, but as the shield of 1,000 heroes. A skin of iron that bore the soul of chivalry until the last thunder fell. If the echo of steel and shadow still stirs your blood, then let the tale of chain mail live on in your heart. What once guarded the bravest souls now rests in silence, yet its memory holds firm like the rings it bore. In a world where fire and smoke claimed the battlefield, it was honour, not failure, that led mail to rest. For every knight who fell in it stood 1,000 who rose wearing it. If you felt the chill of the forge and the thunder of war in these words, honour the past. Like, subscribe, and ride with us again, through tales where armour speaks and silence rings louder than battle. Till then, keep your sword sharp and your spirit sharper. Fare thee well.